I'm alive. Let me go and set this real quick. So under the fair use policy, so this is Brian Schaefer. I did a video earlier, and I want to play some other videos. True Crime Garage did some videos with Kelly Bruce. And I want to play one of those. And I want to play, first thing I want to play is a Dateline video. This has Clint on it. If you want to catch up on the Brian Schaefer, go back and you can watch the first video I've done. So let's go ahead and play this video. Let's make it bigger. That's what she said. All right, we'll go ahead. Let me go back to the beginning.
Seems unusually cruel. Less than 1 month after an Ohio man lost his wife to a deadly disease, his son mysteriously disappeared. Brian Schaefer, a medical student, was last seen after a night out with friends. Here's Rob Stafford.
On the end of it, there's the usual stress of final exams, but this year on this campus, something unusual: fear and foreboding.
You think something terrible will happen? I truly.
The next minute, he was gone, and police are baffled.
All the tips that we've received thus far has turned into nothing.
And one student is living a nightmare until another student is found.
I want him home. You know, I want to see him every day.
She's talking about 27-year-old Brian Schaefer, a second-year medical student who seemed to have everything going for him: good looks, good grades, and a girlfriend he adored. Awesome and amazing is how he described Alexis Wagoner on his MySpace profile. Right. And she says the same about him.
He's brilliant. He's handsome. He's sweet and loyal and caring.
Like Brian, Alexis is in second-year med school. Like Brian, she's super smart and striking. The two were inseparable. They'd planned a trip to Florida for spring break, and they had even bigger plans.
Kids.
Are you convinced he's the guy?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, pretty much since day one, I really thought of him as kind of the love of my life.
Want to get married?
Yeah.
Then, one spring night, Brian vanished.
Brian was last seen in this Columbus neighborhood, not far from the Ohio State campus. It was early in the morning on Saturday, April 1st. Brian had been out bar hopping with a friend from school.
Clint.
The evening began about 9.
Just
at 10 p.m.
Did he sound at all
he left her a
concerned when he
message.
talked
I don't
with
know if they
friend?
say that here.
Nope.
He wasn't worried on the phone?
Nope.
Did he sound down, depressed in any way?
He sounded fine.
After Brian and Alexis spoke, Clint told the police that he and Brian walked to some more bars and downed some more shots. And then, with a friend of Clint's in tow, ended the night at the bar where they'd started. This surveillance tape shows them at 1:15 a.m. coming up the escalator to the bar. That's Brian leaning on the handrail. Once inside, they ran into a couple of young women Clint knew.
And Brian was doing his usual thing and was talking to those two girls.
At 1:55 a.m.
I think that's what Randy, the father, got upset with. And I think they'll talk about if I play the right video for the True Crime Garage. There were 6 of them, so I didn't go through all of them. I mean, I listened to them here recently, but I hope that the 6th one I'm going to play refers to that. And there was an interview that Randy did. Randy is Brian Schaefer's father. That he was talking about the dinner that they had at Applebee's the night before Brian went out, and he had, you know, he always, from what I gather, suspected Clint had something, or knew something, or even maybe had something to do with it. And was vocal about it. There was a story where they were doing a search, and he got pretty loud, and called Clint out, and said that he knew more. And I believe right after that, Clint lawyered up. And that's the big thing with Clint, is he lawyered up, so a lot of people think he had something to do with it.
Brian made his final appearance on the video. He was outside the bar chatting with the young women. Then he walked out of frame and disappeared. Police say it appears he went back into the bar. Minutes later, Clint and his friend got ready to go.
It was closing time about 2:10, 2 o'clock, and Brian was nowhere to be seen.
They told police they called Brian's cell and got no answer, even checked the bathroom, but no luck. So they left without him. Saturday passed with...
And I don't know if they'll tell this part of it, but Brian was known to do the Irish goodbye, where he just left and walked home. And the bar was, I think, like maybe 4 or 5 blocks away from Brian's apartment. And I saw Reddit maps of it and the route. And everything I read, it's a pretty bad area. Columbus, there's some bad areas, and Columbus, Ohio, there's some bad areas.
Without a word from Brian. By Sunday morning, Alexis was growing more and more concerned. She hadn't talked to Brian since that Friday night call, and they were due to leave for Florida the next morning.
Miami.
And he still wasn't answering his cell.
I was really scared.
Late that night, Alexis says she began what would become a
So
ritual.
I guess that's his apartment.
Going to Brian's apartment to see if by some miracle he'd come home. Inside, she broke down. Since then, she says she's cried millions of tears.
I came here every single day the first few weeks and just, laid here in the middle of his bed and just sobbed.
5 weeks after Brian disappeared, and after an intensive investigation, Columbus police still have no idea where Brian could be. Sergeant John Hurst is the lead investigator.
Any sign he's used his credit cards?
No, there's no sign of credit card usage,
Cell phone?
no cell phone usage,
Buses? Airplanes?
nothing.
One part of the mystery is how Brian left the building without being caught on tape. Both bar exits are covered by cameras, as the escalator that leads to the street. Outside the bar, out of camera view, are stairs and an elevator that lead to the first floor. Once on the first floor, the only way out, without being seen on tape, would be through a service exit that leads to a construction site.
Yeah, I'd say
with
that's where
doors
he
to the
went
street.
out.
But why would Brian go that way?
There's no reason for anybody to
To
want to
not
go
be
out there.
seen. I think he just did the Irish goodbye.
Heavily under construction, and it would be difficult.
The
So
rumor was that him and Clint got in a, there's another reason why I think Clint had something to do with a shouting match. And it was over one of his girls in his class. Brian was flirting with this hypothetically. And then he didn't like Meredith, who Clint was seeing at that time. And I think he just wanted to get away from him. And he was supposed to go to another party that night. So I would say something, and he never made it to that party. So did he go back to his apartment, or did he want to go to that party and something happened to him on the way to those two places? They said his apartment looked like he wasn't there, like nothing was wet and everything was tidy. Yeah, so here, hold on.
Police say it's possible that because Brian was drinking heavily that night, he may have been vulnerable to foul play. If Brian tried to walk back to his apartment half a dozen blocks away, he would have been an easy target.
Yeah,
Police-
and they said like when he got drinking, and I think they'll tell all this in the video if I got the right video in True Crime Garage, and if I don't, I'll go back and maybe play it later, do a part 3. But Brian, they said, was known to kind of instigate. You know, he's one of those guys. You know, I've done this too. Like you drink, you kind of run off at the mouth and starts. I didn't really start stuff, but you know, kind of run off at the mouth and start things. You know, he was punched once at a bar at a Texas Ohio State game.
Say there's a significant amount of crime in that neighborhood. In the meantime, Brian's father, Randy, is desperate to know what happened to his son.
What has been the toughest moment for you?
Just not knowing or understanding what, why, where, how. I mean, there's just nothing that really fits.
This ordeal has been even more devastating for Randy because just 4 weeks before Brian disappeared, his wife of nearly 29 years, Brian's
He just
mother,
looks like a doctor,
died
don't
of
he?
cancer.
There, he's got a beard
I
there.
just don't understand why I would have to go through so much.
Brian spent that last night before he went out with his friends, consoling his dad.
He was concerned about me. He was going to go out drinking that night earlier. And he told them, guys, I have to be there for my dad, you know.
So he waited to go out that night.
Because he wanted to be with me.
Now his father would give anything to be with him.
Somebody has to know something, or what it may be. Please don't be afraid to call to find my son.
If you know anything about Brian Schaffer's disappearance or to learn more about the case, log on to our website.
Okay. See if there's any interesting comments. I always like reading the comments. Stop leaving your drunk friends behind. Don't let them out of your sight. When you're drunk, stick together. Someone was jealous of him. Just look at him. He like, what was that? Grey's Anatomy, Dr. McSteamy, McDreamy. Would he be McCreamy or McSteamy? I don't. Or well, there was McSteamy, wasn't there? McSteamy, McDreamy. Huh? Maybe Dr. McCreamy. How did I know that? I never watched the show, honestly. God. Yeah, I mean, he just lived. You know, the thing was, like, they're saying don't leave your friend behind. He took off. I mean, and they were trying to call and find him. So, and he did that a lot. So, these short videos don't play the whole. Clint was jealous of Brian. I'm just reading the comments here. I'm just reading like there's a comment where somebody might know, you know, be inside, and you go to Reddit. There's people claiming to know him or be related to him, and yeah. So I'm going to play another video here. It's either, I think it's either going to be Lore Lodge that goes over some theories, which he's very intelligent, and I like the way he explains it. I can't do it. Excuse me. Justice the way he explains the theories and breaks them down. I have an order on my history, and then hopefully the right True Crime Garage. Yeah, so here's Lore Lodge. Let me go to, yes, okay, I think I'm right there. So let me just go ahead and pop him up. So he's going to credit to Lore Lodge. Not that they need it.
Biodefense
They got
research program.
But yeah, we'll go to theories and go ahead and play that.
I will say that Clint probably does
Lore
know more
Lodge.
than he's letting on, at least in my opinion, but it seems very unlikely that he'll talk at this point. So all we can really do is look at the theories that have come up. There are a lot of theories here, but they all focus around several main archetypes. The play after leaving, play well side, get trapped and dying in the site.
Which is possible. I thought
is
at first that's what it was.
beginning with the foul play
He's so
angle, there
skinny.
are, of course, the two main options. Either he met his fate after leaving the bar, or something happened while he was there and it was covered up by the staff. Now, the latter option there
Yeah,
does
I think
require
that's what it
a
was.
rather large number of people keeping their story 100% straight while speaking to police, and then nobody cracking for over 18 years. They would also have needed to hide Brian's body not only from lingering customers, but also from the security and cops stationed showing up on camera. And then following that, they would have had to have dumped the body, but they would have had to have dumped it somewhere outside of Columbus, or at least outside of the immediate area. So when you consider the fact that not a single camera caught any of this happening, it does seem rather unlikely. There are lots of issues, not least of which being that Brian didn't turn up in any dumpsters, any bodies of water, or really anywhere in the Columbus area. Alternatively, it's been suggested that the 6'2", good-looking, intelligent, musically talented Brian Schaffer was a victim of these smiley face killers, or perhaps with a reason. However, this differs from one of the same. The other, that Brian,
You know you're good looking when even straight dudes are saying you're good looking.
Columbus, let alone at all. And
handsome
he was
dude.
removed from the area of. Remember, he was only walking, less than a mile to his apartment. So if he was harmed on the way home from the bar, they had to get him out of there without anybody seeing it. Unlike the other theory, however, it's not limited by the lack of detail about how Brian could have left that was missed at the first pass of this investigation. As I mentioned early in the video, the Ugly Tuna was above a Mad Mex, and that Mad Mex had a sloped metal roof over part of its dining area, and it sat just about 6 feet beneath a
He could have
balcony
climbed down the
accessible
balcony too.
from the Ugly Tuna. And that balcony of the Ugly Tuna
about that.
was accessible through a corner of the bar. A corner of the bar directly opposite from the entrance. If somebody really wanted to, they could climb over the railing, shimmy down the bars, hang just like
He is
this
so detailed,
over
man.
the
I really
sloped
like-
roof and drop a
Ace
few
is all
inches
right.
to a couple of feet over the roof. And for a guy's size and fitness level, it would not have been
Oh,
impossible or even really hard. There, he just hopped it off 10th Avenue or North High Street. Alternatively, he could have gone east down the brick walkway of the South Campus Gateway, and at that point, he would have hit an alley which would have led out onto either 11th or 9th. It would be very easy to just blend in with the crowd, and for the most part, nobody just leaving a bar at 2 in the morning is going to remember one random dude in a sea of random dudes. The only question then is the obvious one. Why would he do that? As it turns out, Brian may not have been as satisfied as everyone's space page, as it was archived on April 13th, 2006. As a quick aside to that, it's unclear to me exactly when Alexis Wagner gained access to Brian Schaffer's MySpace account, but in the version of it archived on the 3rd and 6th. So I'd like to confirm that if possible, because if Alexis several days, months after that, so I wonder if that was just something that slipped past everybody, or if it was something that was just reads as follows. I'm a second-year med student at Ohio State University. Only 2 years to go. I have an awesome and amazing girlfriend. She's super hot and lots of fun. I really love music, and this whole doctor thing is really just a job, only temporary, or at least a beach so I can listen to Buffett and drink margaritas
Nice.
with my senorita. I
Me
play
too.
guitar. I also have many if you have any medical questions, feel free to send them to me. Although right now, I don't know much about medicine, but the only way to learn is to make mistakes, so why not? In the Who I'd Like to Meet section, he wrote, Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam, as he helped hair metal come to an end, which in my opinion is not necessarily not opposed. I'm just a guy who appreciates when Pearl Jam comes on the radio that I never listen to anymore. Because who listens to the radio these days?
Even Flow, Once, Jeremy, Oceans, Alive. There we go. We're good.
Daughter. And that one, yeah. He continued, I would also like to burn one down with Bob Marley, which I looked up what burn one down would mean, and I believe in 2006 it would have been slang for smoke a joint. He also wrote, I want to be an alien when I'm reincarnated, but not the wussy kind, the kind from the movie Alien or Aliens. That last sentence is definitely a little on the weird side, but I'm not going to read too into it because I remember what humor was like in 2006. In the comments on his MySpace page, of which there were only 10 when this archive was taken, it was a rather new MySpace account. They're just if you go back and look at the later archives, that number continues to go up. So I think these were just the only 10 messages posted to that point because it was a new account. But in any case, there were a few messages. A couple were from Alexis, and she had posted some compliments, a happy Valentine's Day message.
2006, humor was like that back then. Yeah, I guess you got to look at the world back then too. Like, not a lot of people disappeared and was that popular. Maura Murray was like the first big one, and I think she was even after this one, right? Wasn't she 08 or I can't remember. Yeah, just like people going missing. The way I remember, like, it wasn't. Yeah, like Jimmy Hoffa was like the most famous missing person, and that was like in the 70s, and it was kind of a joke, and yeah, I mean, yeah, cell phones and tracking, they tracked all that stuff, and they got a pings. I forget where it was at after he went missing, and then there's the phone, the call to the phone. They think it was just, some sort of, it wasn't necessarily his phone was working. It was something with the ping. And I believe they didn't put him into COVAs, which, that's where they track you, or they put you in like DNA, and, so anything comes up if you get arrested or whatever, until like 2017 or 18. So it's very logical that he could have started a new life. I tend to lean towards this one with his intelligence, and if he wanted to plan something out. And they said he had cash that night, and there was a check he didn't cash for like $4,000. But if it was still in the account, obviously he didn't cash it. But they said he had cash that night, and I think his mom was floating in money. I mean, he could, he was intelligent enough to pull something like this off.
Disappearance. There's also exactly one message posted by Clint, who wrote, ladies, don't believe a word this man says. He loves the ass tags. I don't know what ass tag was supposed to mean. It could be ass tattoo, could be, I read one was,
I think I know what it means.
We'll just keep the same. I saw butt tattoo. Yeah. I saw tagging things with the word ass. I saw slapping somebody on the ass, like ass tag. There were a bunch of different options. We should stop saying ass so much, though. The booty. Ass butt. In any case, I'm wondering how much of that was a joke versus how much of it was Clint genuinely telling people he's kind of a player. As I was looking through this, it got some gears turning, because Alexis had said some other stuff that made me wonder. A couple of weeks before he disappeared, Brian had told Alexis that she should just go away with him. And she kind of wrote this off as Brian's just struggling to cope with the death of his mother. He's going to be a little crazy for a little while. We just need to get through this. And then a few days before he disappeared, Brian, still struggling to cope with the death of his mother, told Alexis that he thought that she should just move on and find somebody else because he didn't know when he was going to get better. And then there's that little bit about him hitting on Brighton and allegedly asking for and receiving her phone number. forces us to ask the question, was Brian really all that committed to his girlfriend? Looking through all of the articles and other people's coverage, a lot of people have written off the idea that Brian disappeared of his own volition because he was getting ready to marry his girlfriend. He was so happy with his life. He was doing so well. Why?
He didn't buy a ring either. So
why would he want to leave that all behind? Additionally, people said,
and then, if you were going to go away on this trip that your mom paid for, and supposedly going to, propose to your future wife, why are you going out the weekend before at a bar? I mean,
would never leave his family in a state like that. He needed to be there for his father and his little brother. However, he clearly wasn't all that invested in Alexis if he was asking other girls for their numbers and flirting with them at bars. And as far as the angle that, he needed to be there for his little brother and his dad, grief can make people do absolutely insane things. So even if he wasn't having trouble with Alexis, even if he did still want to be around for his little brother, again, losing somebody, especially your mother, that young, can drive you a little insane. It can make you do some things you otherwise wouldn't do. And we have to look at the facts here. Brian talked openly about how he didn't really want to be a doctor and he wanted to be a musician instead. He also had asked his girlfriend just a few weeks earlier to run away with him. Then, when she said that she wasn't going to run away with him, just a few days before he vanished, he told her she should move on and find somebody else. Looking at all of that, it's really hard to ignore the signs that he was dealing with something. It's also really the only explanation that covers all the bases here. For example, he wasn't seen leaving on camera because he didn't want to be seen leaving on camera. He wanted to disappear from the bar that night and have nobody know where he went. He didn't turn up anywhere in Columbus because he didn't want to turn up anywhere in Columbus. And he didn't tell anybody where he was going because that would defeat the purpose of him leaving. There are, of course, other possibilities, and I did mention that there were several theories, and I didn't really go over the whole he's still in the building, that he's in the construction site part, because essentially everybody involved with the investigation was adamant that he was not still in the construction site, and I believe them because, again, it wasn't your average construction site with piles of dirt and logs and wood and everything laying around. This was basically them setting up a store. It was just concrete. It's also very possible that Clint does know more than he's letting on, and something that he could tell us could crack the case wide open. But as things stand, in my opinion, an intentional disappearance due to grief and a general dissatisfaction with life make the most sense here. And this is especially in the absence of other similar cases in the area. This is technically, in some ways, a smiley face killer's case. People have suggested that that was involved. I believe Kevin to say, you can't say that this person drowned if you never found them. I also looked at, are there other young men who have gone missing, who have been found dead in Columbus, who kind of match this situation? And the one I found was a guy named Joey LaBute, but that was 10 years later, and it didn't seem to have any real connection. There also were no other ones on top of it.
Face.
There are a few other people, don't get me wrong, but nobody whose circumstances really match Brian's. At least not well enough to seem related. There were also, to my understanding, no smiley faces found near the bar, so you can't even take that line with it. The one thing I did see is that there was a little stint there where people were worried that a serial killer was active in Columbus, but all of the targets there were women. That doesn't mean that Brian can't have seen something he wasn't supposed to, but it also can't really have been in the bar. Whatever happened to Brian, if something happened to Brian, happened after he left.
I don't know if they whoa, that was like I don't think they mentioned it here, but the dumpster theory, one of the detectives thought maybe he was met with foul play, you come across some people, maybe somebody drove by, he said something or whatever, and then, they beat him up and went too far, and then they threw him in a dumpster. And because something like with they did do a landfill search. Some people believe he's in the landfill. There was rumors there was this, that he was inside, and he mentioned it inside the building where it happened, and then people work there hit him. It's pretty It's pretty wild, you know. Like there is a lot of possibilities on this. With what happened, I do want to play some of this video here, and I hope I'm playing the right one. And this would be True Crime Garage, and they are from the area. And this has got Kelly Bruce on it, who's basically the godfather of this case.
And also, they were all getting money. Randy, the father, was getting money. Brian was getting money.
And it's just theories, like them talking, like what they think and all this stuff. I'll go ahead and make it, because there's really nothing to watch here, so I'll just go ahead and play it through.
Brian didn't, as far as we know, didn't have that money in his possession at the time. Derek was going to get money, so they were all getting money. I don't want to say that somebody wouldn't kill somebody for not much money, because there's times in your life that $100 is a lot of money, and then there's times in your life where you're like, $100 wouldn't change much. So I think one of the issues with this is, like you said, Kelly, he's on the other side of town. He has many people that see him there. Obviously, the bar closes, so at some point he could have left. But it just it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then it's like, yeah, they had a confrontation at the mother's funeral, but it seemed from everybody I talked to that was kind of worked out already.
Yeah, it was definitely worked out. And I haven't found anyone that has told me that there were any issues between Derek and Brian. It seemed just to be between Randy and Brian and Derek.
And we don't know where this tip was coming from into Crime Stoppers.
Right.
And I think that's the tough thing too. Is like, did this tip come in and
Derek,
and did Crime Stoppers go, hey, we think there's a lot of weight to this, but
the brother Derek,
in the last 20 years, they're not beating a drum, like a very loud drum, that this is what happened to Brian Schaffer.
And, you know, based on the way Kevin told it to me too, I'm not actually sure that this was a tip that came into Crime Stoppers or if this was his own personal opinion.
My problem with a lot of these theories in these cases are people come up with the theory and then they try to find evidence of the hey, spring break time.
His alibi was basically Alexis and the Schaffer family.
So we left. But also, we walked to the bar. So we figured, again, a lot of times people treat their male friends different than their female friends because she's a female. But a male friend walked to the bar, so he'll be fine. He'll walk back. And then also, if there's evidence that he gets out of the bar, we have a lot of surveillance footage that we see a lot of the people that he was supposed to be there with left. So if he is walking home, again, not that far of a distance, but not safe, not a safe area to walk home by yourself.
And as far as Clint goes, it's important to know that, you know, he did have an alibi for Friday night going into Saturday morning in Meredith. She was also his alibi for Saturday evening, and all day on Sunday, his alibi was basically Alexis and the Schaffer family.
Well, and to back that up, Meredith takes a polygraph test, and don't you think detectives are going to say, do you have any more knowledge of where Brian's at? Were you involved in any action that would have harmed Brian? Did you kill Brian? These are questions that they would be asking her during the polygraph test. So if she's answering them correctly, the polygraph test she passed, she's not showing deception, and the cops believe her, then you go, well, chances are, again, unless they're this murderous duo, they don't have any more knowledge, or at least Meredith doesn't have any more knowledge than she's sharing.
Yeah, a lot of people speculate that when Clint picked up his car Saturday morning, that is when something happened to Brian, and that is when he killed Brian.
Yeah, I would have.
But CPD did it with a fine-tooth comb, and There were no signs of a struggle or anything like that in Brian's
I
apartment.
think Clint
Well,
Waco
I like to compare
disappeared.
cases. In the Adnan Syed case, they go, Heyman Lee goes missing. Her ex-boyfriend, Adnan, does not call her ever again, doesn't call to check in on her. So people point that as evidence that he might be guilty of the crime. Then people look at her current boyfriend at the time that she was supposed to meet up with, and he doesn't call her either once she goes missing. So then people point that as to possible evidence that he's guilty of the crime. And so in the Schaffer case, if you go, well, Clint, it maybe is possible that he had some involvement in Brian going missing. Well, Clint calls him after he sees him last. Well, actually, he doesn't call him. He gives the phone to Meredith and she calls, but it comes from his phone. And then later the next day he calls to say, hey, yeah, I know we lost you the other night at the bar, but hey, I'm just calling, check in on you. So again, to me, that's not much of that's not much evidence to anything, but there it is. He called him at least twice after they lost contact.
A lot of people think it's strange as well that, he got the attorney and everything so soon after, but so did Meredith. She got an attorney as well. And a lot of people say, well, Clint stopped all communication. Well, he didn't. He stopped all communication with Columbus Police Department unless his attorney was present, which is normal and what a lot of people would do in that situation. But I actually have letters of communication up until I think it's a month before Randy passes away, where Clint was still talking to Randy Schaffer.
Again, I think this is where devil's in the details and people go, oh, well, he lawyers up. Well, he didn't lawyer up and stop talking. And alone in the room with detectives, and they feel uncomfortable and feel like the detectives are pushing them in a certain direction to confess to something that's not true. And if Clint felt any of that, and again, how close is he with his parents or his friends or whoever? He goes back and says, I was in this room and they were just being mean. And it could have just been his parents going, you know what, you're going to get a lawyer and you can communicate with them, but we're going to make sure that lawyer is present. And then once you get a lawyer, news flash, listen to that lawyer. So once he gets a lawyer, then some of those actions, those aren't actions from Clint. Whatever actions are happening from the lawyer, you have to go, well, those are actions coming from his.
Yeah, so I want to play that because that kind of sheds a little light on Clint. A lot of people think he had something to do with it. I did too, because he was the last person to see him, and he lawyered up. But I mean, to be honest, I'd probably lawyer up too. If I was in the same situation as he was. And the father was, really thought Clint had something or knew something, or maybe even had something to do with it. And then I just want to say this real quick, and I'll call it here. Clint's lawyer put out a thing basically saying that, well, I paraphrase it, basically that Brian voluntarily went missing, and he's the one adding stress to his family, not me, and basically alluding that the police knew that, or one of the police officers knew that he voluntarily went missing. And I guess the relationship with his brother wasn't real close. His father wasn't good, and his mom, who was the closest person to him in his life, passed away. And then the father passed away later after Brian went missing. And so poor Derek's lost his whole family. But if you really want to get layered into this case and really get into the Brian Schaffer True Crime Garage is the way to go. Kelly Bruce, I can't remember. I think she does Brian Schaffer Dead or Alive. And I think she might have been on the Comeback show, but I'm pretty sure Brian Schaffer Dead or Alive. She did interviews with Brighton, one of the two girls that was in front of, Brian was last seen with. So, a very interesting case indeed. So, all right. I'm going to end this. End it.